Good afternoon. Welcome to GE 6100 Understanding the Self course. Today's topic is about psychology and the learning outcomes. You are expected to discover the meaning of psychology, list various fields of psychology, define various fields of psychology, and discover the history of psychology. What is psychology? Psychology comes from the Greek word psyche, which means breath, spirit, soul, and logia, which means study of the mind. Psychology is also the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. Psychology is an empirical science, psychological science that relies on empirical evidence as a way of knowing about how we think, feel, and behave. Psychology is presented in different theories. And so, what is a theory? A theory is a general set of principles proposed to explain how a number of separate facts are related. Theory allows you to propose reasons for relationships, derive explanations, and make predictions. What are the goals of psychology? Psychology seeks to describe, psychology seeks to explain, psychology seeks to predict, and psychology seeks to influence behavior and mental processes. Last time you were talking of what anthropologists are supposed to be doing. Now, this time, what psychologists do? Number one, the psychologists can be into research, but take note there are two kinds of research, the pure research and the applied research. Psychologists can practice in a clinical setup or they can be in the counseling area. Also, psychologists can also be in the academy. So, what are the fields of psychology? There are a lot of fields of psychology, namely clinical. This is a branch of psychology that involves conducting tests and examinations to assess the mental health of a person. Number two, counseling is a branch of psychology that is similar to clinical psychology that focus on assessing the mental health of an individual, but the focus is mostly on common problems of people like marriage problems, work problems, stress, peer problems, and also the stress brought about by this pandemic can also be under the common problems that this branch of psychology can look into. Another one is school. This field aims to improve students' performance in schools, obviously. Educational, the field of psychology that deals with testing related activities in education that may focus on curriculum, scientific experiments to ensure validity and reliability of tests, and other special needs of the students. Another one is the developmental. This field of psychology aims to study the developmental changes in human behaviors and actions from birth to death. Another one is personality. This field aims to examine the differences and similarities in human personalities and how these personalities reflect on their actions. Social. This focuses in particular in the study of humans and their interaction with their environment and with others. Environmental is another field of psychology that focuses on improving the physical environment. Another field is experimental that focuses on the conduct of experiments and research in laboratories. Last time you were talking of the experimental approach by the anthropologists, but anthropologists spend time working with people by immersing or by immersion or be with them on a day-to-day basis. That unlike psychology, that experimental approach can be done in remote and yes, there could be research in the laboratories out of sight. You've heard of the term industrial psychology. So it focuses on the psychology of industry, including operations, processes, and human involvement. And it has three subparts. It could be organizational, human factors, and consumers. Health, it is the application of principles of psychology for the treatment and or prevention of disease. Another field is in sports that focuses on the application of psychological principles and studying activities related to sports. And you might have heard of the Olympic gold medalist Heidelin Diaz that made mention of her team that comprises a different field. And one of them is a psychologist that would oversee everything that is every activities that are related to sports, or psychologists would always look into the mental well-being of Heidelin Diaz. Forensic. It is another field that focuses on providing assistance to use often in law enforcement, and that psychologists may administer tests to profile a suspect or assess the mental state of the victim. Now, what about the evolution of psychology? Your module presented a matrix of psychologists and their contributions and the respective era that started out with Plato in 428 to 347. That Plato is a Greek philosopher who argued to the role of nature in psychological development until the 20th and 21st century psychologists that were able to contribute to the social cultural school of psychology, that their contributions have included an understanding of how people develop and are influenced by social norms. So, what are the approaches of psychology? There are a number of approaches, and experimental psychology begins with structuralism, as presented by Edward Titchener, who was a student of Wilhelm Wundt. Wilhelm Wundt, a German psychologist who opened one of the first psychology laboratories and helped develop the field of structuralism. And so Edward Bradford Titchener was his student and promoted this approach from 1867 to 1927. That, according to Edward, structuralism breaks conscious experiences into objective sensation, the sight or taste or the organoleptic, and subjective feelings like the emotions, memories, and dreams. And so mind functions by combining objective and subjective elements of experience. Functionalism, as contributed by William James from 1842 to 1910. William James was an American psychologist who also opened one of the first psychology laboratories and helped develop the the field of functionalism that focus on behavior in addition to mind and consciousness. Functionalism made use of direct observations to supplement introspection, which is also influenced by Darwin's theory of evolution or natural selection. The next approach is the behaviorism, as contributed by John Brodus Watson from 1878 to 1958, that focuses on learning measurable or observable behavior. Another advocate of behaviorism is B.F. Skinner, a psychologist who developed operant conditioning theory. And now the Gestalt psychology, or the patterned behavior, as introduced by Max Wertheimer and Wolfgang Kuhler, that this studies the perception and its influence on thinking and problem solving. Of course, who wouldn't know Sigmund Freud, that focuses on psychoanalysis, the approach that says that cognition affects behavior. As presented by Edward Tolman, he said that animals could learn by observation. Another one was George Miller, and also Ulrich Neisser, that promoted cognitive psychology, or CP, which is concerned in higher order mental functions such as intelligence, thinking, language, memory, and decision making. But of course, psychology cannot operate alone. Psychology draws facts from other science or other related sciences, such as anthropology, which we discussed last week. And we know that anthropology is a science that studies man's culture, that understands culture of the people. The study of individuals within the culture is necessary, which the field of psychology. Sociology deals with the origin and evolution of human society and the progress of civilization. And sociology is interested in the behavior of the group, while psychology is interested in the behavior of individual in the group. Another field is physiology, that deals with the operations of the body systems and organs and their interactions. In psychology, it studies human behavior as affected by these body systems and organs. Another field is another science, is biology, that studies living organisms, their functions and process. Psychology studies human behavior as affected by cell, chromosomes, hormones, genes, and other body functions. Another science that is related to psychology is economics. Economics is concerned with the production, distribution, and consumption of goods as well as services. That here, psychology deals on individual behavior as affected by economic matters. Of course, with the way economics are going these days, especially because of this pandemic, of course, psychology might be able to assess the individual behavior, or an individual within a family as affected by economic shambles these days. Another one is a political science that deals with the origins, organization, principles, and operations of government. While psychology is concerned with individual behavior as a governing political scientist, for example, or as part of being governed, or it could be vice versa. Chemistry deals with the composition and property of substance and the changes that take place in those substances, like drugs may have an effect on psychological functioning and behavior of individual taking those drugs, and which belong to the realm of psychology. And lastly, psychiatry, which is a field of medicine that is concerned with the treatment of mental illness. Clinical psychology, for instance, is concerned with the diagnosis of abnormal behavior before treatment is given by psychiatrists. And this one line coming from Paul Valery said that the purpose of psychology is to give us a completely different idea of the things we know best. And so that's it. That's for the topic for today.